Season 7 is one I've often described as, they ran out of ideas. But the Pegasus is one of those gems that proves an old idea can be reworked. Ron Moore was inspired by the novel Raise the Titanic, a Clive Cussler tale about the recovery of a secret treasure within, which James Cameron later proved was big, big bucks. But while he was inspired by the ideas of it, he also went back to the well with his previous ideas and merged them to create this memorable tale. Originally it was to start with something about Pygmalion, but was changed to the far more memorable
Captain Picard Day is one of the children's favorite school activities. They look forward to it all year.
Another holiday made up to pad the wallets of the greeting card industry. Yes, the kids on board all admire Captain Picard as a role model, and the kids worked all the way up to Captain Picard Eve to get these special projects done.
I don't know. I think the resemblance is rather striking. Wouldn't you agree, number one?
That's the second worst impression of me I've ever heard. But before the piñata with Picard's head on the critter can be broken open, Admiral Blackwell contacts Picard with a super-secret coded message. They're to cancel their current mission and hustle to pick up an admiral with Starfleet intelligence for a very special mission.
Captain Picard Day?
Oh, yes, it's for the children.
Yes, I'm the reason for the season. They make it to the rendezvous to meet Admiral Pressman, played by Terry O'Quinn, most notable for his role as John Locke on Lost. He was also in an X-Files episode we did. Riker's a bit shocked, though. Pressman was his captain on his first assignment, the Pegasus, lost in this sector 12 years ago. Only a few escaped before it appeared to explode, and that seemed to be the end of that. But then we learned that Starfleet has an operative in the Romulan High Command. Now, given what we've seen over the past few months, someone like that probably could have tipped the Federation off on any number of Romulan plots, so I think it's likely that this is related to Spock's movement, that someone high up may have come around to the Vulcan way of thinking and agreed to share some information with the Federation. In this case, that they found a piece of the Pegasus and are now searching for the rest of it. So the Enterprise is going to have to find it first. Sure enough, the moment the Enterprise arrives, the Romulans are already waiting, cloaked. Things are tense, naturally, but the Romulan captain seems to be putting on as solid a poker face as Picard over this. They both know what's going on, but neither one can actually admit it, so they agree to go about their search. Oh, I mean astronomical research. It'll be a long search, so time for Pressman to remind Riker of how green he was back on the Pegasus. But a few other hints are dropped. There was an experiment, something for the good of the Federation, but the other members of the crew clearly objected to something about it. Yet it's still important because Admiral Raynor, head of the Starfleet Security, has given Riker special orders about this mission. Specifically, keep his frickin' trap shut. So whatever it is, Picard probably is not going to like it, but Riker's going to have to do it. I thought you understood the real meaning of Captain Picard Day, but no, you got wrapped up in the commercialization like everyone else. We soon see Picard chatting about Riker with Pressman, about how what convinced him that Riker was the right first officer was because he was willing to defy orders when the situation seemed to demand it.
You wanted someone with a history of disobedience.
I wanted someone who would stand up to me. Someone who was more concerned with the safety of the ship and accomplishing the mission than with how it might look on his record.
Pressman is briefly annoyed at this, that a captain must be obeyed without question, but admits he's just a little on edge because of the memory of what happened with the Pegasus. This prompts Picard to ask for a bit more of an explanation of what happened, but Pressman offers nothing, except
12 years ago, I needed an officer that I could count on in a crisis. Someone who would support and obey my decisions without question. Someone who was willing to trust my judgment. And that someone was Will Riker.
You see the difference between the two men, the green Riker and the Riker who risked a general court-martial for disobeying Captain DeSoto? And this isn't because a transporter split him into two people. In the span of a few years, he changed. One of Ron Moore's best TNG episodes was Tapestry, the story of Picard's regret, yet one that was instrumental in making him the man he was. This is what I mean when I say he went back to the well, because what we're seeing here is a similar event that made Riker. Before the ramifications of the Pegasus, he was the Riker that Pressman knew. After, he became the man Picard felt deserved to be his first officer. I don't doubt that it was what made Riker the man he was. 6 years from academy graduation to first officer on board the flagship, offered his own command a year later, that's a meteoric rise. And while Pressman will attribute some of that to himself, it seems that the incident woke Riker up much as Picard had been woken up by his near-death experience. I'll get into that why soon. But the first hints come in with Riker's reaction to breaking a rib in a sparring match with Worf. His choice of words show that the distraction that caused the injury is about the Pegasus.
I can't believe how stupid I was.
You both must have gotten a little carried away, that's all.
No, it was my fault. I got distracted at a crucial moment.
It can happen to anyone.
I knew what I was supposed to do, and I didn't do it.
It also shows that the normally self-assured Riker is feeling less confident in his abilities. A sudden reminder of catastrophic failure will naturally undermine your confidence, and if you dwell on it, compromise your ability. But fortunately for the mission, Geordi picks up something that's probably the Pegasus, inside of an asteroid. Unfortunately, the Romulans are wondering what they're so curious about, so Riker suggests just blowing up the asteroid and the Pegasus along with it in order to stop the Romulans from finding it first. An act which would ensure that the experiment can't be resumed and that Riker can draw this to a quick close. Pressman finds that unacceptable, though. He wants some tech to sort this out instead. So they decide to blanket the asteroid with ionizing radiation to prevent the Romulans from scanning it. It's either that or paint the whole asteroid black in the hopes the Romulans won't notice it's there. After that's sorted, Pressman takes Riker aside and chews him out over the suggestion to blow up the Pegasus. But what seems to surprise him is the fact that Riker is standing up to him. While he's not defying him in any way, Riker's body language is screaming that he doesn't give two shits who Pressman is. He is not going to be the least bit intimidated being yelled at by some admiral. Pressman is momentarily taken aback by this, Will Riker, but he actually compliments him on it. While he is the insane admiral of the week, his insistence on following orders isn't a frothing-at-the-mouth control freak thing right now. He calmly says that Riker's self-assuredness is an asset. The only thing Riker needs to remember is his sense of duty and loyalty, which he knows that Riker has. It would be easy for Riker if Pressman was condescending or barking at him, recoloring the past so that Pressman was just another bully in authority. But this... Riker was confident in his captain at the time. 12 years have shaken that confidence. By acting more human and being more supportive, it helps to restore that confidence again. That he may not agree with the purpose of the mission, but he will follow Pressman and try to give him the benefit of the doubt at least. But then Riker gets pecker-slapped by the past as Picard pulls out the report from the JAG officer who investigated the loss of the Pegasus, which states that there was a mutiny, something unthinkable on a Starfleet vessel, especially during that era. What amazes Picard, though, is that Riker has never mentioned that before. It'd be like one day finding out that your brother-in-law once got into a fight with Elijah Wood, and from someone else. It's such an unusual thing, you'd think he would have mentioned it. So Riker explains during the process there was an explosion in engineering that caused numerous casualties, and when that happened, most of the crew on the bridge, including the first officer, mutinied. But Riker didn't.
I was 7 months out of the academy, my head still ringing with words like duty and honor.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby.
When they turned on him, I thought they were a bunch of self-serving, disloyal officers, so I grabbed a phaser and I defended my captain.
Picard's incident in Tapestry brought him face to face with his own mortality and taught him to seize each moment, knowing it may never come again. Riker's incident taught him the harsh lesson that his leaders weren't always right, that they may have more experience, but they were nevertheless fallible, and more importantly, that there is no comfort to be found in the phrase, "I was only following orders." Riker has to live with what was asked of him, and that made him into the officer that he is. And the loss of those lives, his friends, I think it explains him rather well. Take, for instance...
When it comes to this ship and this crew, you're damned right I play it safe.
What sticks in Picard's craw, though, isn't the mutiny. It's that the JAG officer said that it was likely that something was being concealed. There was no follow-up to that, and the report was buried. Like in one of Moore's other TNG tales, The First Duty, Picard is extremely annoyed at covering up the truth, and Riker won't tell him what exactly happened then, and why Pressman is so determined now. Picard's response hits him right between the eyes.
And I will just have to trust that you will not let Pressman put this ship at unnecessary risk. And if I find that that trust has been misplaced, then I will have to reevaluate the command structure of this ship.
And none of that can be argued with. Riker is not being asked to violate orders. He's being told that if he jeopardizes this ship for no other reason than that he's following Pressman's orders, then he's not the man Picard thought he was. All this, incidentally, is why I find These Are the Voyages especially absurd. Riker is in an emotional tug-of-war here that's leaving him exhausted and flustered. Fitting that LARPing bullshit around this is completely counter to the reality of the situation. Picard's not getting any answers from Starfleet either, except to follow through on Pressman's orders, so reluctantly they return to the asteroid to continue the salvage operation. But it's too deep inside to risk transporting, and the thing is so massive that flying a shuttle inside would risk it being slammed into a wall. So Pressman orders the Enterprise itself be taken in, because that sounds so much safer, doesn't it? Picard notes his objection in the log, but goes ahead, although the situation is tense. So tense that they even give the extra a line.
Plot a course into the chasm. Maneuvering thrusters only.
Course plotted, sir.
It may put the production over budget, but Picard knows this mission is serious. He even informs Pressman, quietly, that if the passage is too narrow, he will abort the mission. He is not going to risk the Federation flagship over a salvage operation. Luckily, it doesn't come to that. The Pegasus is up ahead, merged with the rock somehow. Preparations are made to salvage the component that they came for, but instead of a full away team, only Pressman and Riker are allowed to beam down, while Picard is left to stew in his own frustration. They arrive and Riker is glum, even more so when Pressman finds the device intact. As Riker explains, up until now there was always the chance that something had happened that could have destroyed the device, but it's here, and it's salvageable.
Right up to this moment, I had the luxury of time. But now I've got to make a choice. And Admiral, I'm afraid my choice is this. I can't let you start these experiments again.
Riker stands his ground, that not only was the experiment wrong, but by their actions he and Pressman killed these people, not shutting down the experiment safely, but fleeing the ship instead.
So on reflection, you'd rather be a traitor than a hero?
I wasn't a hero, and neither were you. What you did was wrong, and I was wrong to support you, but I was too young and too stupid to realize it.
Riker was an officer who trusted his captain absolutely, which I think he does now. But the difference between that Captain Pressman and Captain Picard is that Picard has proven he deserves that trust. And Riker didn't need to put on a frickin' chef's hat to remember that, because he knew that. Even when he told Picard he couldn't say anything, Picard never said that he stopped trusting Riker. All he said was that trust had better not be misplaced. And that trust is ensuring that the ship is not being put at needless risk, while Pressman's trust is that Riker will obey him, period. Well, this is about to put all that to the test. The Romulans seal the entrance to the cavern, and then the captain calls up to gloat. The whole thing was just an accident involving a geological experiment on the surface, and I don't like your face either. He offers to beam them to his ship, though, and return them. Not all that dissimilar to the Romulan crew in Timescape, which is probably around half a year earlier in Showtime. It's pretty likely, though, the Enterprise crew would be interrogated before they were returned. The Romulan captain is probably operating on orders from the Tal Shiar, just the same way that the mission here for the Enterprise was dictated by Starfleet security and Starfleet intelligence. With no way out that won't drop a few million tons of rock on their heads, Riker makes his decision which side that he is on. He reveals the truth to Picard, that that piece of equipment is a Federation cloaking device. The question was long asked why Starfleet ships didn't have cloaks of their own. Gene's position was, we don't sneak around. But a lot of people found that explanation pretty weak, specifically pretty much anyone who wasn't Gene Roddenberry. So we now get the answer in show. As part of their treaty with the Romulans, the Federation agreed not to pursue cloaking technology. This would explain why the Enterprise D Mark II in the future would have a cloak. With no more neutral zone, there was no more treaty stopping them from using it. And the Defiant has a cloaking device because the Romulans gave specific permission for this one cloak. I mean, they could, after all, have installed a Klingon cloak, but a Romulan one means it's not a treaty violation, and thus it would be legal, unlike this one, which is undeniably illegal. This calls for uncorking a Picard speech, and in the face of such a hostile act, Pressman takes command of the ship, with the downside that you can't really take command if nobody will listen to you. I mean, do you expect the Enterprise D crew to abandon Captain Picard? That goes against the whole meaning of the Captain Picard season. Picard naturally asks how becoming invisible is going to help them. So Riker explains it doesn't just make them invisible, it's based on advanced Shadowcat technology that allows them to phase, like in the episode with Geordi and Ro, the next phase. If they hook it up to the Enterprise, they might be able to pass through the wall of the asteroid and escape. As they hook it up, they figure out what must have happened 12 years ago. There was a plasma overload that in space looked like an explosion while the ship phased out. Then it was pulled in by gravity into the asteroid until the cloak failed, and then it materialized inside of it. Or to put it in simple terms, let's hope we don't get ourselves killed. Well, obviously this is a tech plan, so of course it's going to work without a hitch. Picard then disables the cloak to ensure that this can't be covered up like it was 12 years ago. Tells the Romulan captain that there will be a full explanation, and he locks up Pressman. But the mood is spoiled when Riker says that he should be locked up as well. After all, he did help support Pressman's actions 12 years ago. If what Pressman did was illegal, then what Riker did was illegal in supporting him. Picard takes no pleasure, by the way, in locking up Pressman. He is dour as he sees the man go, knowing that someone could rise so high and not measure up to the ideals of Starfleet. For Picard, locking him away is no time for a victory strut, tempting though strutting is for Picard. He's also resolved things with Riker, admitting that this incident will probably cost him some of the respect that he has earned over the years, but his stepping forward when the time came proves that his priorities are where they should be, and ensures that the respect Picard has for him is going to remain intact. Provided he doesn't use that phase cloak to enter the women's shower room. We know you were planning it, Riker. We know. Post-episode follow-up, annoying character goes to Admiral Blackwell, who was less lifelike than the Picard doll Riker was playing with. We have a burn baby burn for the Pegasus, destroyed by being fused with an asteroid. Final score for the Pegasus is 9 out of 10. It's a great character piece with a good bit of mysterious thriller mixed in. LeVar Burton directed, and he gets a magnificent performance out of Terry O'Quinn and Jonathan Frakes. Pressman may be the bad guy, but O'Quinn fleshes him out enough so that you understand why he once had Riker's loyalty, yet can also see why that would be shaken by now. And Frakes has to carry the emotional baggage for this episode, which he does magnificently. The idea of the treaty rubs some people the wrong way. Why would Romulans get cloaks but the Federation can't have them? But I don't have a problem with that. We don't know what else was in the treaty. Maybe there were other concessions that more than made up for that for the Federation. The Romulans are chess players, after all. They wouldn't be afraid to give up something if it allowed them a long-term advantage, while the Federation prefers peace and seems to dislike sneaking around anyway. Or, if you hate that goody-goody thought, think of it as a political ploy. The Federation is a democracy, after all, and that means playing to the masses sometimes. Maybe the reason that Pressman and his allies are acting this way is because they feel they were hamstrung by a decision made to help ensure a re-election half a century ago. Next week, Romulan summer draws to a close with Face of the Enemy, where you get extra Troy for those of you who missed seeing her for most of this episode.
Oh, you'll be interested to know that I've arranged for a Commander Riker Day next month. I'm even considering making an entry myself.